minutes behind, so she should join in a couple minutes here.
Okay. And by the way, Amir, let me ask you, and I know people can hear us, but it's all good. I know that people have a lot of interest in Stay DC, and even though I know this is quote unquote a budget hearing, do you think the councilwoman would be up for talking about
Yeah,
it?
I think so. We've been fairly engaged with the group of folks who are having conversations about how to improve it. And so to the extent that folks have concerns or specific feedback, I think this should be a fine forum to kind of discuss
Okay,
that.
good.
Yeah.
I mean, we were sensitive to the fact that this is a budget briefing, and that's a bit of it's kind of a bleed between budget and oversight.
Nope, I think that's totally fine. It's ultimately it's all a part of the same work, and we appreciate Absolutely. that's really one of the focuses of all of the members, and certainly of the council member as the chair of the Human Services Committee.
So you missed the Wilson building?
I have to admit, I missed the Wilson building. It just provided some structure to my day.
You know, that one of the jokes of working at the Wilson building is that so many people, when they leave it, just because of the frenetic nature of the existence, often say they don't miss it. You know, it's like it was a great tour of duty, but you know, hallelujah. and yeah, I think in these circumstances, it's very missable.
Yeah, no doubt.
I miss it because I got so much done in the hallways that was part of scheduled meetings. You know,
right?
Is who you bump into and are able to engage. Yeah,
that's completely missing. We're kind of at the whims of who is in front of their phone, and you can't just kind of bum rush somebody in their office during work from home.
That's exactly right. Now, Hammond types in there, that's what lobbying means. Yes, it does. So let me just say to our panelists, the councilwoman is just a couple moments away from joining us. As a precluser, I'll just encourage you to, if you have any questions, put them in the chat. We're going to have the councilwoman just open with what she wants to share with us. And hopefully that will trigger some questions. We have her for about 30 minutes. And I'm sure that there's a lot to talk about, but I'm also sure there will be time for questions if you have them. So as you listen to her, give thought to what you may want clarity on or more information about. And there she is.
Good morning.
Good morning, Councilwoman. How are you?
Doing fine. Sorry to keep you waiting.
No, that's okay. Amir got on early and let us know that you were in transient, figuring out, finishing up something else and so forth. So,
yeah, let me tell you, I'm going to be so happy when I don't have this physical therapy on my calendar twice a week anymore. 2 more appointments and then I'm done. So
I can relate. I was playing golf and my second shot of the round, I got too much ground. The top part of my body stopped. The bottom part of my body kept moving. And so I was in 2-day-a-week chiropractor visits. I'm in like month 3, but I am back to playing golf. But
you didn't learn your lesson, huh?
And my chiropractor is almost in Bethesda and I live in Southwest. So
nope.
Zoom.
Nope.
Zoom. So anyway, let's get started. Thank you, Councilwoman, for agreeing to be with us. Obviously, we miss our in-person Advocacy Day, which you've attended every year since we've had it, and you've been on the council. There's so much more about the Wilson building that we that we miss. Amir and I were talking, and I was saying, I missed the hallways. I got more done in the hallways than I did in our scheduled meetings. But I just want to give you an opportunity to tell us about your budget priorities and the issues you see the council and your committee addressing. Just for everyone, of course, Councilwoman Nadeau is Ward 1 Councilwoman and also Chair of the Human Services Committee. In that regard, she's over homelessness services and human services and a host of other things. And so with that, Councilwoman, tell us what to expect.
All right, thanks. And thanks to all of the attendees today. It's great to be together on Zoom. And I look forward to being back together in person as well. So, from the human services perspective, since I became chair, I've been very focused on ending chronic homelessness. And that continues to be a focus. But given where we are in the pandemic, we are also very focused again on eviction prevention. And obviously these things go together. So over the past several months, we've had a series of roundtable discussions around eviction prevention, around rental assistance. You may be familiar with my budget enhancements to ERAP over the years, but now we have all of these federal funds being administered through state EC. So we've had several conversations, in the lead up, what should this look like? What does the community needed to look like? Who are the partners? And now that we're in implementation, we're getting biweekly reports from the administration on how the money's being distributed and where, working with partners to try to get those funds out the door. Folks know that they have it available. And we now have a staff level working group on state DC as well. That's continuing to push concerns up to the executive and see if we need to be making any tweaks. I was concerned to see cuts in the mayor's budget to ERAP. I don't think that state EC is going to solve all of our problems. We know that we have folks with rental arrears prior to the pandemic. I will be looking to enhance that once again. We're really struggling, I think, to figure out what the right amount is. So, very interested in any inputs that CNHED has there so that we can sort of have our target, because I do think that what could happen is that Bowser, at this point, really, Phil could say to us, well, why do you think you need that? And show me the numbers, right? Which honestly was a little bit of the conversation that we had last year budget cycle, if you recall. I mean, he wasn't convinced that we needed to put more funds in. I think ultimately did, but it was a debate as to how high should we go. And that was pre-state EC. So it's going to be harder to convince him now. And of course, we do rely on colleagues to pitch in. So the advocacy around this really needs to be at every committee level, so that once again, we can have all the colleagues pitch in. Continuing to press on the opportunity of purchasing hotels or other properties for long-term uses, PSH, other affordable housing models. Project-based PSH is probably the gold standard. We don't have enough of it. We don't do enough of it. I'd love to see an all 8 ward strategy for that, the way we did for short-term family housing. And so using the federal funds we have, and perhaps, frankly, some of the economic downturn to acquire properties that, are not in use anymore, or that are, looking to change ownership, is really, in my mind, a good opportunity. We need to continue, we need to enhance Project Reconnect to connect homeless residents to resources. We need to fill in some gaps in the youth services budget in homelessness. We need to do more permanent supportive housing. We need to enhance targeted affordable housing. We need to enhance the local rent supplement programs. These are all really important. Obviously thrilled to see the new funds in the Housing Production Trust Fund. I'm also thrilled that there is the LRSP to back that up so that we can truly do the affordable housing that is part of the mission of the trust fund. I'm definitely interested in hearing from folks whether it's enough, right? It sounds like a big number. And we've never had a big number like that to match the amount in the trust fund. So I don't want to be distracted by the fact that it's new and shiny if it's not the right number. So very interested in that. And then I'll say also, you know, despite the fact that we have this infusion of federal funds right now, that's not going to be here forever. It's essentially one-time money, even though it may stretch a couple years. The challenge with that is it really depends on a full recovery of our economy and more to sustain those programs in the out years. And we are still not quite getting everything we need anyway in this budget because we just have a lot of needs in the city. So working with council members Allen and Lewis George on raising tax revenue, the proposal we're considering is increasing income taxes on our highest earners to fund to some of the most important programs that are still underfunded in the district. For me, you know, that continues to be PSH, potentially some mental health needs in the schools. There's still a gap there. You know, violence prevention. There's a lot of other things that I think would be on the wish list there. So interested to hear from folks too on places where we need more recurring funds. We just finished our hearings in the Committee on Human Services. You know, the truth is that, you know, our CFSA budget looks pretty good. We're trying to close some gaps with our workforce in disability services still because we need to increase the pay for those on the front lines. Often immigrants, women of color doing that work, supporting our residents with disabilities. And we have Bega in our cluster now, so we have to do some work getting them set up with some more resources as well. But really the places that we have to make the most enhancements at this point are in the human services budget in the areas that I've mentioned. So I really look forward to talking with everybody today. Steve, I don't know how you want to do this. I mean, I can flip over to the chat box and see what's in there.
A couple of things first. I think I can go through them and tee them up for you very quickly.
Okay.
Or point to them. One thing I want to tell you, first of all, we will be getting you our budget ask later today. We are a little later, like everybody is, because of the mayor's several delays in releasing her budget. And there are a couple of clarifications that we have been pursuing with the mayor directly before we settle, but we are now settled on what our asks are. And just on ERAP, our ask is 15 million, but you will see that in writing today. I think that we definitely agree with you that despite state DC, you know, the need for ERAP as ERAP works is is still very much going to be there.
Is that total or more?
That's more.
Okay.
All right. So yeah, the way we do our stuff, it's always more than baseline. It confuses the heck out of me too, Councilwoman. I just like, give me the total number, and they're like, well, no, this is what we have last year. This is what, and it's like, no, I'm a total sum person. But I will literally within an hour or so of us finishing up, I will be sending you and your team our complete budget ask. Like I said, there were a couple of clarifications from the administration. We are still figuring out whether we are completely good with the new proposal around project-based LRSP. There have been some verifications of how it's going to work that we've been pursuing. We've been back and forth with the administration. We also have some outstanding issues around the DC low-income housing tax credit, which Councilman Allen put in last year. We're back and forth with the HCD. We hope to work it out with them so that we can support their language. If not, we may be asking the council to support a language modification or some amendment to the administration's proposal. But we are desperately trying to work it out with the administration.
Okay.
And so we'll get you that. So I just want to give you an update since you mentioned ERAP, and also let you know sorry that we're later than normal getting you the budget ask, but you will literally have them within a matter
I
of
mean, honestly, nobody knows what's in the budget this year, so it's kind of hard.
Yeah, no, we understand. My joke for this budget season, and Councilwoman, you're too young to remember this movie, but there was a movie decades ago, a war movie called The Great Escape. And The Great Escape was based on a World War I strategy, World War II strategy, where they had timed POW escapes all across Europe. And the notion was that a lot of people would get caught, but a lot of people would get free because the whole Europe countryside would be flooded with free POWs. That's kind of how this budget season feels. A lot of stuff is getting caught, but there's just a lot of stuff to keep up with this year. So we understand about that. Let's get to a couple of questions. We know that the council member is supportive of the every weekend pedestrian zone on 18th Street, but since we submitted our revised plans to the MSETG 6 weeks ago, we've heard nothing, no idea what the delay is since everything has reopened. Please help move this along. That is from Kristen Barden. I don't know if you have a response for that.
My team is working directly with Kristen on this, so we're continuing to push. Obviously, this is a big priority for me too. So I don't have an update on it, but you know, we're in the trenches on that one.
Okay. Thanks so much for joining us, CM Councilmember Nadeau. I was confused by Director Zeilinger's answers regarding the purchase of hotels without relying on LRSP. Do you think this approach is sufficient?
So, right, everything's confusing this year. She basically said that, you know, they are looking at some property acquisition. They're not exactly sure what they want or need. And they may use some stay dollars. They don't really know. So I think what we have to figure out as a council is, do we have the ability to sort of direct them to do something like that? I don't know the answer. I mean, I think we could certainly carve out a tranche for that sort of thing. The risk, of course, being, is it too much? Is it not enough? You know, if it's too much, then will they just reprogram it? If it's not enough, then will they say, well, you didn't give us enough, we couldn't do it. So I think that's something that we need to look at and see what our authority is on it. And, you know, I think, you know, Homeward 2.0 certainly is pushing us towards that, right? That we need these project-based housing types. So I also think the administration's been doing this weird dance around the Marriott Wardman Park and whether or not they want to acquire it, probably because I don't know, maybe they don't want to show their hand if they're in negotiations or something, but like when I talked to the deputy mayor about it, it seemed like it was on his radar. It's something they're interested in doing. The question is, what would it be, right? I mean, it's such a big site. It could be all the things, right? I think we're beyond the point where we propose a site that size to be all of one thing. But if we could acquire it, it could certainly check a lot of boxes for people in need. So we're gonna keep plowing through on that.
Yeah, I agree. I think it is too big a site to, I mean, there's gotta be some intentional thinking around it, I would imagine. And we've had a number of our members who pay attention to these things actually come and express differing views about what they think should happen. So we've been trying to amass all of that. The next question is there a way to direct funding to help connect residents facing eviction to services and connecting them to employment?
Yeah, I mean, so what's really interesting is there is a new program in the DHS budget called Career Map TC. And this is, from what I gather, it's basically Director Zeilinger's baby, where she's trying to utilize all the resources we have and sort of package them together in a way that gives people a chance to build wealth and move up in their careers and actually get out of poverty. And that's not something that DHS has been very focused on, really. I mean, TANF, we do that a bit, but it's limited, you know, through the work opportunity program. So is it directly through state EC? Probably not, but I think it's an opportunity, and I think that that's the way the agency's thinking now, is how are we helping people actually connect to things that are going to help them get out of poverty. So one thing that is challenging about state EC is it's really a reverse of the model that we've had with ERAP, in the sense that ERAP, of course, always being administered by CBOs, has allowed us to wrap around people seeking rental assistance. And that's still a really important model. If I'm guessing what the administration's thinking was, because we have not exactly gotten a straight answer on this, but by centralizing the process, I think the thought process a little bit is that there's a lot of people impacted by COVID who need rental assistance that maybe don't need all the wraparound. If we can get everybody through a central portal and get them their rent, then they may be fine and not need the full wraparound that we've done with ERAP all these years. So you lose something a little bit with the central portal, because obviously there's people who are eligible for ERAP who are getting state EC funds now who could use that extra touch. And, you know, I don't think the way state EC is set up with the direct portal is necessarily going to be connecting people to things. Now, my understanding, and I know there are CBOs on this call who could perhaps correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is the CBOs are now being brought in a more thoughtful way to assist. I mean, for example, we know CUDSN is doing some application fairs and things like that. I'm sure others are as well, where you have the housing counselors helping them fill out the state EC application. There's a better opportunity for that face-to-face interaction, for those connections to services. So I think really, you know, we're going to see soon we're through the low-hanging fruit in terms of people who need rental assistance who can do the application themselves. The work of the CBOs will once again really be front and center. And that, I think, is what ultimately has always been the way that we've connected people to the services they need. So we have to stay focused on that. And that's one of the reasons that, you know, my committee and my colleagues and I are really coordinating to ensure that the continued rollout of state EC meets the needs of our residents. So we know it's not.
I appreciate that. I don't have details to share, but we just launched a major partnership with Booz Allen, and we're getting in excess of 25 Booz Allen employees for a year, and we got to kind of target them to two separate bodies of work. One is our community anchor partnership with the work with the hospitals and universities, but the other one is going to be looking at the disconnect between homeless services and employment and workforce. And so they're going to help us do some analytics of how it is working. I'll share more details with you once we get it baked out. We just started to meet with the Booz team, but we're very excited about it. And it may ultimately offer some insights that are remedies to some of the problems you just outlined.
That's great.
Yep. Next question. Is there council awareness of interest in the DC Interim Disability Assistance Program for persons who are unable to work and are waiting federal resolution of their SSI, SSDI applications? They have no income in the meantime. And the question is, can we ramp it up in stages over the next 5 years?
Yeah, I think we can, and there's interest, and this is definitely something that I've heard since my first days on the council. It's something that's always included in testimony. You know, I think it's a really good category for one-time funds, you know, especially because it's really about helping us clear out the backlog and get people covered until the feds give them their coverage. It is, at the end of the day, a decision about what is the greatest priority in the human services budget. You know, if we have an extra 3 million, is it going to go to ERAP? Is it going to go here? And so I think that's really why we haven't done it in the past. But it's something that I'd like to be able to fund if we feel like we can fulfill all of the other asks, or maybe even partially, right? I mean, we don't have to do any amount helps. So it's definitely something that I've had on the list over the years, but haven't been able to get to the funding for.
Great. CNHED has actually launched digital in partnership with some of our members and some other stakeholders, a digital inclusion initiative. And one of its statement / question, we'd love to see funding for digital training for adults in DCPL's budget in FY2022. Hasn't been funded in a while. I know we've been engaging Councilmember White's committee because there's an OCTO element to supporting digital inclusion, but there's also a funding side of it as well. I don't know if this is something that's on your radar screen, and I'll make sure that we send your team our digital inclusion effort. It's, I mean, obviously the pandemic exposed digital divide in ways that we had not deeply appreciated before.
Yeah, so it looks like that's a $2 million ask. Is that something that DCPL is on board with, or is that like just something we want to get started and we think they're the right home for it because that's where people access computers?
I actually don't know the answer to that.
Oh, it's not 2 million, Yvette's saying. Okay, I'm looking at probably your old budget asks. Sorry.
Yvette, give us the update and tell us where DCPL is.
That hearing is Monday, so it's good timing. 795. Okay, got you. Yeah, so DCPL's hearing is Monday. So I guess I'm wondering, is that something that you all have talked to DCPL about before, or is that just something that we're proposing?
Yvette, can you respond to the DCPL comment?
You've talked to them, okay.
Yeah. Okay. See, look at this. We're doing budget and policy in the text. I love it.
That's great.
Let's see. We are almost at time. There is another question. Unity Park in Adams Morgan and 7th Kennedy Street in Ward 4 and 1st and Kennedy Street, also in Ward 4. There are 40 people grilling food and playing loud music all night on the sidewalk at 7th and Kennedy. I think this is a more broad question around.
Yeah, Kristen, I can follow up with you. I mean, that's in Ward 4, so I would highly recommend that you work with your council member on that. But I saw that you texted me overnight about some public safety issues, so I'll shoot you an email about what's in the budget and what's going on. I'm more fluent on what's happening in Ward 1, so I'm more than happy to follow up with you.
So I think that's all the questions I'm seeing, Councilwoman, unless you caught something that and I think we're at time. I think we told your team 30 minutes. But as always, Councilwoman, thank you so much for your leadership. I mean, I have to say this in the most affectionate way. I'm losing track of what year this is for you, but I remember from the very beginning in your first year, how gracious you were in connecting with us, and you've stayed connected throughout the years. Always open to our budget pursuits as well as our policy issues. And I'm just amazed how much you have wrapped your head, heart, and hands around, you know, over the years since you're joining the council. And clearly you have very informed and definitive views about what the city needs and what communities need and so forth. So we consider you a great leader and visionary and ally in the process. And thank you so much for your leadership.
Thanks to everybody who joined today. I know you're all working really hard. And some of you may be, you know, taking the rest of the day to observe our newly minted federal holiday of Juneteenth. So I thank everybody for coming to meet with me anyway, and look forward to continuing the conversation.
All right, and we'll see you Monday. Thanks.
Take care.
All right, bye.